Hey, this is Øystein from Borknagar. You are watching Richard's Metal Fan.
Hey everyone, it's RichardMetalFan here. Welcome back to another episode of Richard Metalfan Interviews. This is episode 25, and today's guest we're talking with Øystein Brun. He is the guitarist and pretty much the founding member of the Norwegian metal band Borknagar. We're going to be talking about their reissue of their self-titled debut album for the 25th anniversary, as well as like the Norwegian metal scene, songwriting, and much more. So, without further ado, let's go talk to Øystein. So what's up, guys? I am here with Øystein from Borknagar. Øystein, how are you doing today?
Perfectly fine. A bit tired though, but because we had the first meeting in 1.5 years this weekend in Oslo and stuff. So we rehearsed quite some, but also drank some beers. So it's a little bit the day after, so to speak, but all good.
Awesome. So basically, we're going to be talking about you guys are reissuing your self-titled debut album because it's now 25 years since it first released. How did that whole idea come to be to reissue your debut album?
It's by nature, it's a long story. It's an old album. There's been a lot of, what can I say, different version of this album released by different labels, some illegal, some not authorized, and some proclaiming to be a remastered version of stuff like that. And that has been something that has been frustrating me quite a lot the past 10 years, basically. And so we did some efforts to just stop all this kind of illegal usage of the album, so to speak. We got it muted from Spotify and all that stuff. And I was kind of a little bit actually my basic idea was just to basically lock down the album, just to not, that's it, give it to my kids and they can do whatever they want with the debut album when I'm left. But on the other hand, I had this. I mean, it's a treasure part of my life. It's a great album, I think, still. And also had this idea that if I wanted to do another version of this album, I wanted to do it properly and with a heart and with a soul, so to speak, because there has been so many different versions out there claiming this and that. But this is a true remastering of the album. This is a kind of true way of I mean, this is a worthy re-release of the album, in my opinion. I think all the others that have been done through the years by different labels hasn't been really, I don't know, I haven't been too fond of it, to be honest. But this version is really something. The plans have been in the back of my head for a long time to just try to dig into my archives to get back to the original tapes, the original mixes, and kind of try to what can I say, to do some, to make a proper re-release of this album. I did a remastering myself and not change anything really, just make it more listenable in a sense, more open sound picture in a sense maybe, but the sound, the flavor, everything is the same. But I kind of just wanted, and also there is a side to this album or this release that we have a lot of bonus material, which is material that I haven't heard it since. Yeah, we did it back in the
Wow.
mid-90s. So it was kind of interesting journey also for me, just, to just dive back into history and look at try to find and achieve old pictures, old tapes. And when I got the tapes, I needed to get some old cassette players to actually play these old formats and stuff like that. So the whole thing, the whole process of it made sense in so many ways, and on a personal level. Going through memories, going through old pictures, old material, listening to old, recordings of riffs I made, like when I was 20 years old or something like that. It's quite funny, fun stuff. And some headache, of course, because of all the old technology and all that stuff. But also I think for the listener, the people that, I know that because, I mean, the past 20 years, I almost daily I got somebody contacting me about this, being a mail or a messenger or messenger, whatever, they want to buy the album or love the album or something like that. So that this album has always been so present in my life, even though the album is old. So I know there is a lot of people out there that really wants, you know, to grip onto this album and to listen to it and stuff like that. So this re-release is really for those guys. I mean, this is a kind of I think a worthy re-release of the album. I've done everything on this album myself, except of course for some stuff I can't do, like layout and all that stuff. But you know, it's in terms of sound, everything is done by myself in my own studio here, and that was kind of the basic idea. Also, I wanted kind of this album to be a very intimate release in a sense.
Right.
This is a really proper, well done re-release of an album to the fans that has grown up with this album. So it's kind of sort of celebration of my career in a sense, of the band's career in a sense.
All right. So being as this album is now 25 years old, do you have like a different perspective about the album now as opposed to when you first released it?
You know, it depends on the mindset, of course, in terms of production wise and all that stuff. I mean, there's a lot of things to say about it, but still, I've always learned, you know, I've been doing so many albums through the years that I've kind of learned to, I kind of regard the old albums as a chapter of my life, of the chapter of the band's life in a sense. I mean, done is done, and that's it. And I don't kind of dwell too much about it, whether it's the bad sound or I played something wrong or, you know, whatever. So I'm, you know, there is a lot of things I could say about it. I mean, there is a lot of flaws and drums and, you know, technical stuff like that, but still it has a charm, it has an elegance, I think, the album, that it just had to be like that. I mean, that's the album, that's the nature of the, you know, what we did back then. It's the flavor of my youth in a sense. So I love the album. I have a very personal relationship to it in so many ways, and I'm still proud of the songs. And I wouldn't change it. I mean, and that's also my point with the re-release. We haven't changed anything about it, the original album. I've just improved it slightly though, because there is some points of improvements on this album, but in terms of the general soundscape and all that, but there is no change of sound or anything like that, and that's because I love it with all its flaws in a sense.
All right. So what was the whole like mind frame, or what you can remember, to the whole writing and recording process of the album? Let's go back to like 1996 in Norway. I mean, obviously I was only 2 years old when this album was released. So what was the whole experience like recording the first album?
Put it very short, it was a golden time in so many ways. It was a very exciting time. You know, the scene back then in the mid-90s, I started to work on this idea. I had some riffs I remember. I actually started to record some material already in 94, and which is also documented on this bonus part of the re-release actually. There is a snippet of the very first recording I did for the band, for example. Yeah. Yeah, what can I say? Well, I lost your question a little bit. Sorry.
All right. So like, what was like the mind frame recording the album?
Yeah, you know, it was a golden time. It was, I was like 18, 17, 18, 19 years old during this period of this album, or the birth of this album, so to speak, the process that led to this album. It took about 2 years from the basic idea till we actually hit the studio and recorded the album and got it released. So it was 2 years of my youth. I spent every minute, every hour on this album. And back then, you know, the scene was in Bergen was really small, really small. I mean, there was just a handful of people, and you know, I didn't knew everybody that well and very close friends and all that, but everybody knew who everybody was in a sense. So there was a very kind of creative atmosphere, a very kind of healthy competition kind of thing going. And back then also, something I've been reflecting about quite a lot actually, is the fact that everything was so different back then. I mean, we didn't have smartphones, we didn't have internet access, we didn't have, I mean, I had a fax machine, that's all I had back then. I didn't even have a mobile phone or a cell phone. And you know, when we met up on the pubs back then and just hanging around drinking beer, we kind of talked about our music. I couldn't show the music or the cover or a snippet from the new song, you know, play it on my phone or something like that. I had to talk about it. So the communication back then was pretty much by word, by talking, by being together, you know, drinking a beer or whatnot, and because of that, the whole thing became much more, in a sense, mysterious, in a sense, because I knew that the guys in whatever band in Bergen at that time was working on a new album, and they had told me about it, and I had, of course, an idea about what was going on in that camp, so to speak, but I hadn't heard a thing. I hadn't seen the cover. You know, so there was much more kind of organic music environment, in a sense. I don't know how to put it otherwise, but it was, and that was kind of exciting, creative times, and in a sense everybody was pushing each other, in a sense, because there was a healthy competition to it. Yeah, I had a new riff now and this title or whatever it was, and kind of, yeah, and then the next time on the next pub or next weekend or something like that, the guys came back and, yeah, now we have done something like this and blah blah. So there was a golden time in so many ways. Very exciting, very cool times, and we had to build it kind of because there was nothing in Bergen at that time in regards to metal concerts or metal clubs. There was a rock club, though, to be honest, but there was not really any metal scene to talk about. So everything had to be built from the ground up. And, you know, keep in mind, most of us back then was like 17, 19 years old. And a couple of years after, in the mid-90s, all of a sudden the whole world came in the door, you know, in terms of because of the church burnings, all the media and the attention and stuff like that. And all of a sudden you had big labels wanting to sign everybody in Bergen and stuff. And, you know, that was crazy times. It was, but it was very cool, very creative. It was a very honest, very real and organic, in a sense. It was face to face, and it was, yeah. And also, you know, the whole thing of establishing a band back then, the whole concept of raising a band, so to speak. Back then, going to studio was extremely expensive. It costed, you know, loads of money for just one day in studio, for example. And basically, there was no studio. And you know, we didn't have YouTube at that time to spread our music. We didn't have the equipment at home that we could record something decent either. So the whole process of building up a band, that was, I mean, by now we probably look at it as a kind of extreme sport, in a sense. I mean, I spent all the money I got back then, that was much, on my band, on the idea, on this concept. So it was, for better and worse, of course, but it was tougher times, in a sense. Back then, you really had to stand behind your idea if you wanted to achieve something. You couldn't just push something out on Spotify or do some self-promotion or whatever, and you hit the jackpot in a sense. You really had to work for it, really.
Yeah, can't.
I'm not saying that. I mean, I'm not saying that bands nowadays don't work. That's not my point. But it was so different. You had to. I mean, I was walking from my parents' house with a big plastic bags of letters and demos and flyers and all that stuff, and I had to go to the post office and spend all my money sending all these cassettes. And maybe 1 month after, I got some feedback in terms of, yeah, maybe a cassette back or something, or maybe just some flyers. Or so the whole thing moved slower. Everything was slower. Everything was, in a sense, tougher, I would say, but in a good way, because it shaped us, I think. And that's what I see now when, you know, the old guys that we was hanging around in Bergen back in the day, in the mid-90s, early 90s, it's still the same guys. They are still around.
Awesome. So talking about the sound of like you and of this album, of the self-titled to now, like does like this serve as like a direction that you would take for like later albums, such as like Olden Domain, The Archaic Course, or even your latest album, True North? Or with every album that Borknagar has done, do you always take like a new approach?
Yeah, in a sense, I mean, a very kind of important value for me, or trash, you know, when I started the band, one of the basic ideas I had about the band was that I wanted to make a musical entity that was outside everything. Of course, obviously, I was, you know, into the metal scene, at least with one foot, I would say. I was never kind of in the so to speak black circle or anything like that, but I was always into the metal scene since I was like 14, 15 years old or something like that. Started to tape trade around 88 or something like that. So it's been a long ride. Sorry, man, you have to repeat your question.
It's all good. In terms of like the sound, does it serve like a direction you would take for like your later albums, or do you always take a different approach?
Yeah. Back to the main point. The basic idea about the band back then, it was the fact that I wanted to make an own musical entity in a sense. I wanted to make my own musical universe, my own musical bubble, call it whatever you want. But I wanted to do something outside everything, of course, based on the shoulders of the metal scene or the metal background I had back then. So for me, the approach and that's something I've clinged on to all through all the career, is that I want to feel, as a musician, I want to feel independent. I want to do whatever I want to do, musically speaking, on the next album or whatever coming up. So that's why we have the name Borknagar, for example, which is entirely invented. There is no meaning behind it. It's just a name that should symbolize the band and only the band.
Great name.
and then we kind of, yeah, of course, I was a kind of you know, was into the scene with one foot at least, and you know, into metal and everything, and I, before Borknagar, I had a death metal band going, kind of extreme death metal going, with a lot of growling, and everything was about being, you know, extreme and brutal and fast drumming and, you know, speedy riffs and complicated riffs and all that stuff. I'm still proud of that, but I remember I came to a point where you know, my personal upbringing, my father was old hippie, and I kind of grown up on prog rock from the 70s, Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, you know, all that stuff. I've been, you know, been grown up to. So at some point when doing death metal, I just came to, you know, realization that, you know, I wanted back to my musical roots in a sense. And for me, my musical roots was more the atmospheric, melodic music, the more swifting, changing music in a sense. And that was roughly the idea. I wanted to make music that, you know, have all the facets of life in a way, the ups and downs, the dark side of the bright side of life, and all the spectrum of emotions, basically. That was the basic idea of the band. And then we, of different reasons, I mean, back then there was only one studio that was decent, and that was Grieghallen Studio. And of course we did the debut album there. We actually entered the studio before we had a vocalist, before Garm was involved. Just, you know, yeah, we'd had first, and yeah, we're gonna do this. We had no money, but we still booked an expensive studio for it. I had no idea how to pay the studio and stuff like that. So it was kind of youthful, you know, just going for it kind of thing. The album just kind of became the way it became because the way I played, I remember we recorded the one of the guitars and the bass and the drums and it's together. I mean, me and Grim, the drummer back then, and Roger, or Infernos, who played bass at that time, we were just standing in a studio recording the songs live. And then, of course, added some guitars afterwards and stuff like that, and mixed it. And of course, so it was extremely organic and natural flowing process in a sense. I didn't have too much plans about where I'm going with this. I didn't even have any plans about doing a band of this. It was, at that point, it was more like, I want to do this musical thing, a musical entity, a musical bubble or whatever, and let's see what happens. And so what happens. The album is here. And from there, I kind of just follow this basic idea I've always had through all the work I've done, that I want to be independent as a musician. I want to do whatever I want to do musically. And on the second album, we got the opportunity. We signed with Century Media, and there was different, you know, bigger budgets and more opportunities, so to speak. And I was a big fan of some production from that studio at that time, I remember. So we just, yeah, let's go for it. Let's do it. And that kind of changed our sound quite some, but I think still, you know, the wrapping might be a little bit different from album. It might be different flavors to it. It might be different way, different producers involved, different studios, different equipment, you know, all that stuff. But still, I think that we have, at least I think so, that we have been able to preserve the very core of the band in a sense. And that is, again, as I said, the independent being just, you know, a musical rover, a rover in a sense, just, you know, a wanderer or journey or something like that. I've always kind of envisioned my music or my musical career as a journey in a sense. I'm, you know, you start at one point and you end up somewhere, but I don't really have a plan where I'm going. I'm just going ahead. I'm walking the fields I find nice to walk. I'm climbing mountains that I enjoy climbing, kind of thing. So there hasn't been a really big scale plan about things, but you know, from album to album. But I've had these basic principles of the band very present in the band, in my opinion. Of course, some albums have. We did an acoustic album many years ago, entirely acoustic, just with violins and stuff like that. And that was, yep, I could just felt the urge to do something like that. We did, cool, let's go, you know, take another step.
Awesome. So I guess you guys just take like there's not like a preconceived idea, it just comes naturally.
It comes naturally by instinct, I would say, though, to twist around a little bit. I mean, I think that, you know, at least for me, in my perspective, in order to do the best music you can do, in a sense, you have to follow a little bit your instinct, your gut feelings, and all those things. And you have to allow things to just happen. I mean, there is so many times, as an example, in studio, for example, working on something, that accidents, mistakes turns out to be great ideas, for example. So my point is that, of course, I have plans. I have always some plans about the next album, some ideas, some visions, but I don't have plans like plan A, plan B, and plan C. I kind of more like, let's do this and let's see what happens, and to have the mindset to allow that, you know, things might change. Mistakes might be a very good idea, for example. I kind of try to let the music kind of just flow, in a sense. I think if you try to fill the bucket with water and then kind of in the end the bucket just will explode or, you know, tear apart or something like that. To me, it's more like keeping the river just flowing, in a sense, if that makes yeah, if you get my point. I just
that's
try
perfect analogy.
Yeah, I kind of just try to keep the you know, the flow going, the river just, you know, streaming. I'm not kind of trying to fill up the bucket and then, you know, it's I don't think I or anybody in the band actually work that different than anybody else. But it's to me, it's more about the mentality of stuff. And for me, music is very much so. I mean, about mentality. It's about how you approach it, how you work through it, how you know, everything from a very basic thing. When I'm sitting here in my studio with my guitar here, working out new riffs, that is the mindset I need to get those riffs going. It's to get this river streaming. It's not that I can sit down and now in this moment I'm going to make a good riff. It doesn't work like that. Maybe if I was an architect or something, I could sit down and just, you know, let's draw this house because, you know, whatever needs this and that and blah blah, I can just do that. But for me, music is to actually dare to just let this stream flow and to just let it come naturally, so to speak.
Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. So I guess you guys always just like push boundaries with it. Every album, like as a fan, I could, if you play me like 30 seconds of a song, I could tell like, oh, that's off of Epic or Origin or Delay Style, but True North when I first hear it. I think, like I said, you guys just push boundaries, and you've been doing it since the 90s, and you pretty much stick out from like all the other 90s black metal bands in Norway with like Emperor and Mayhem, which they're rebellious, but I feel like you kind of like rebel within the rebel, so to speak, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and that makes perfectly sense, because that was some of the notion I had back in the day. Because I had one foot, or I was involved in the metal scene in the 90s and all that stuff. I was never a part of these criminal affairs like the church burning and stuff. That was not my cup of tea, because I was into the scene of one reason only, and that was the music. When the other guys was more like, yeah, drinking and beer and pubs, and of course I was also, but I was not, you know, for me, the whole core activity doing this was music. So at some point in the metal scene, I mean, the Bergen scene is small, quite small, at least at that time. I felt a little bit kind of choking in a sense at, you know, musically speaking, because all the bands, you know, was like, yeah, you know, kind of cherishing the individualism, for example, and, you know, you know, should be unique. Every music, all the bands wanted to be unique and all the stuff. But when I was kind of leaning a little bit back and kind of observing this, trying at least to observe this a little bit from the outside, I had a feeling that, not everybody, but I had a feeling that there was a tendency that everybody was basically doing the same stuff. I mean, just with a little bit different flavor. So that kind of sparked a musical, yeah, rebellion in a sense. I wanted to just, you know, yeah, rip off these chains to conformity in a sense. I just wanted to do whatever. I mean, back then, on Old Domain, we did, I remember as it was yesterday, to be honest. It was in Woodhouse Studio in Germany, and we was like discussing, should we add this Hammond organ on one of the songs? And we had an actual discussion about it, because we was like, maybe it's a little bit too much. Maybe people will, this is a sellout, this is wimp out, it shouldn't be like this, blah, blah. But I remember that we was like, no, fuck it, let's do it. And you know, at that time, nobody, at least from a black metal scene, you know, even discussed using Hammond organ or less clean vocals or choirs and stuff like that. There was maybe some, you know, choirs in terms of synths and Emperor and all that stuff, but there was nobody, you know, doing that stuff. So I remember when we did our Old Domain, that was kind of very exciting, because we honestly didn't know how people will react on that one, because people kind of probably expect a little bit of follow-up to the debut. But we didn't do that. We did a quite different album at that point, but it worked perfectly for us. And I actually think that album sparked a little bit of, yeah, I don't know. I think that was one of the albums that brought the scene, the Norwegian scene, made the Norwegian scene a little bit broader in a sense.
All right.
They pushed the limits a little bit.
All right. So jumping ahead, it's been 2 years since your latest album, True North, has been released. Are you guys working on new music?
Oh yeah, the stream is flowing all the time. yeah. We have quite a lot of material actually. Always have plenty of material, so that's no big deal. But we are kind of we don't stress it, to be honest. We first and foremost we kind of have this feeling that we want to, you know, go out and play True North a little bit first. We want to, you know, meet people. We want to talk with people about this album a little bit, and kind of do True North a little bit before we kind of release another album. And also musically speaking, I've been busy in my studio now with Corona and everything, and done a lot of production for other bands and stuff like that. So has been a busy time. I mean, Corona for me has been extremely busy. But we are working on new material as we speak, to be honest. So there will be things happening in not too distant future, but we don't stress it.
Awesome. So I got 2 more questions for you. Yeah, so I feel like with all your albums are kind of very conceptual, pretty much how I view it. If someone were to like listen to you guys, would they have to like go from True North to go back to like Winter Thrice and Erdre, etc.? Or do you think it could also 2 questions in one? And could you also probably explore like other mediums to create art in terms of like visually?
Yeah, the visual side of things. That's a tough one. I don't know. I'm first and foremost a musician, a composer, and a lyricist. I'm not too much into the visual side of things, to be honest. But when you say conceptual, I mean, I've never intended, to be honest about it, to make a concept album. I don't personally. I don't like the concept albums too much. But still, I see what you say. I mean, there is, but I think that's more the more the core of the band, you see. I mean, the way I have some kind of principle when writing music, for example, or lyrics. You know, I've kind of always, I grew up in the forest. When I was a kid, I didn't go to kindergarten or anything like that. And I kind of almost refused to go to school because we was up in the forest, up in the mountain with our knives and just building, you know, huts and playing around and stuff like that. So when doing Borknagar, the basic idea with it, I wanted to use nature, the forest, as the scenery of the music in a sense. I didn't. At one point, I have kind of been losing a little bit up on that on the latest albums or some stuff like that. But for many albums, I didn't want to have any words in my lyrics, for example, that included something more than. I just wanted to, all the words I was using, all the themes in the lyrics should be circling around nature and natural things in a sense. I wanted to use nature as and I think that is what you see through in all the albums, that the core theme in the band is there. Even Epic, for example, was a very kind of experimental philosophic album. We did a lot of your references in the lyrics to philosophical quotes and stuff like that. We just wanted, you know, balls out, tits out, just do everything complicated, a lot of structures, a lot of riffs. Let's just make the most of it on every aspect of it. And then we did the let's say the original album, which was my acoustic album. Then I just wanted to drag everything back to ground. I mean, those albums are like yin and yang. It's like black and white in a sense, but they are still very much connected, I would say. I mean, people would hopefully get a little bit of the same notion from both of these albums, even though they are very, very different.
Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. And I like to save the best question for last. Like, you ready for the most difficult question?
I don't know. My brain is not operating 100% today, but like 90. So let's see. I will try my best.
All right, here we go. How do you know when a song is done?
That was. Oh man. Yeah. You know, for me, a song has kind of 3 steps in a sense. The first step for me is like making the skeleton, making the black and white drawings, the scratches in a sense. This is the outlines of the song. The second step is kind of involving the guys, producing, bouncing ideas, talking about it, listening to it together, drinking some beers maybe, you know. And the third step is, you know, hitting the studio, recording, mixing, mastering, and all that stuff, and releasing and blah blah. To me, a song is kind of finished in a sense when I kind of send it to the other guys in the band. I have a pretty crisp and clear idea of the song. It's not finished by the fact that I have not painted the house. The house is not finished, but the idea of the house is there. It should be like this, if you get my point.
Yeah.
So yeah, when I send the songs to the guys, they're not finished, like completely entirely finished, organized or arranged and produced and all that stuff. But in my head, I then have established a musical entity in a sense. This is a song. And if something in this song breaks, or some of the guys say, we should cut out this riff or something like that, okay, then we just skip the whole song, because then the song is not there anymore, to me, in my opinion. So for me, it's like, I've been doing this all the years. When I'm kind of, the song is kind of gets to life, it's starting to live when I'm sending the songs to the guys in the band, in a sense. But I always send a lot more songs to the guys in the band, and we discuss a lot more material than we eventually release on an album, because we cut a lot of stuff away, and some songs never make it and stuff like that. But for me, a song becomes a song when I'm kind of starting to send the songs to the guys in the band. That is when I kind of, because, you know, for me, making music is a very intimate thing. I always make music alone. When I write songs, I don't want anybody close to me. I just want to be in my bubble, make songs. But when I come up out of this bubble, I'm ready to let this bird fly in a sense. And then I send it to the guys in the band. We listen to it and we start the process of arranging everything and fine tuning things and all that stuff. But at that point, the song is the song is in my head living. It's kind of not done, but it's there as a musical entity.
Awesome. So before we go, I just want to thank you for this interview. Is just anything else with Borknagar that you would like to promote? I'm really looking forward, fingers crossed, that happens this time. Devastation of the Nation next year. Here, I'm already gonna go see you guys in Birmingham, Alabama, and Atlanta, Georgia. Just anything else you would like to promote?
Yeah, I mean, we are really looking forward to this US tour. I just want to get that out there, because that that has been tough for everybody, of course, during the pandemic and everything. And of course, we have postponed the tour one time and two times actually now, yeah. And it has been for us it would be easy to just skip it, just fuck it, let's just start fresh now this next year. But we really want to do this US tour, so we have been clinging on to the idea, and we have been doing everything in our power to make it happen this time. And this time I think it will happen. So I would love to see a lot of people out there. I mean, we haven't been in, we did one show, the Maryland Death Fest, in a couple of years ago, but we haven't been touring US since '99 or something.
Oh, wow.
So I mean, we are looking forward to the tour of the century, at least for us. That's the mentality we have. So hopefully people will come out and see us and meet a lot of people and play some music and have a good time. That's really look forward to that.
Awesome. So everyone, Øystein from Borknagar, this is Richard Metalfan. We'll see you next time.